The X-Men first appeared in Marvel comic books back in September of 1963, and eventually blossomed into hundreds of incarnations and spin-offs that X-Men fans endearingly refer to as X-Legs. The Uncanny X-Men series reinvigorated the franchise, and by the mid-80s was one of the most popular comics around. The story features a team of humans with mutant abilities who band together to become superheroes under the tutelage of Professor X. The most recognizable character in the franchise is Wolverine, a muscular, claw-wielding, and often sideburn-sporting hothead with regenerative healing capabilities. He first appeared on a panel of The Incredible Hulk back in 1974, but became more prominent in the 80s with the rise of the Uncanny X-Men, and was soon featured in his own comic series that spawned the LJN-published NES game by the same name in 1991. The Uncanny X-Men video game came out 2 years before, in '89, and while based on the first volume of the Uncanny X-Men, you wouldn't know by playing the game, which has very little in the way of exposition. Both of these games released prior to the extremely popular animated series that first aired in 1992 and propelled X-Men into the mainstream for good. Let's see what's up with X-Men games on the NES. As the story goes, the entire human race is in danger. Magneto is out to destroy all mutants, and you must stop him. Very basic premise. The game features a number of X-Men: Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Iceman. Each time you deploy, you'll be paired with another X-Men team member that you can switch to by pressing select at any time. You can play with 2 players, but even if you select to play as 1 player, the game will put you in a level with a partnering AI, and they suck very much and die very quickly. Each X-Men character has different stats and abilities, but the big thing to remember are that the characters who punch, like Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and Colossus, can take more hits, and the ones who shoot projectiles, like Iceman, Storm, and Cyclops, are weaker, but let you keep a distance. Some levels are better suited for strength if enemies are hell-bent on attacking you constantly, and for others, you'll prefer social distancing. The game greets you with a practice mode and 4 different missions, and you can play them in any order you want. The goal for each is fairly simple: move your X-Men team through the level and fend off enemies, but you'll want to consider dodging most of them if you can. Enemies respawn constantly, so you'll be better off staying on the move, whether you're dodging or killing. The levels are maze-like layouts with portals connecting to various areas. They can be a little confusing to navigate, but after some trial and error, it doesn't take long to get the lay of the land. The game is ugly though, no doubt about it, and nothing in the environment is really all that clear. Some areas you can step on, others you can't, for whatever reason. Pickups in this game are very important, and all of them are good except for the magnetic mines. Those freeze you in place and let enemies pounce all over you. No bueno. Otherwise, there are health pickups, smart bombs that wipe out every enemy on screen, a stasis bomb that freezes everyone, and the force field. The force field is the most crucial to farm before you pass through any gates or doors. They are often electrically charged, and the hit detection in this game is poor, and so is the timing on those doors. If you pick up a force field just before you pass through, you'll be invulnerable. What you won't be invulnerable to, ever, while playing this game, is how bad it is. If you plug around in any particular level long enough, you'll come to a boss and a clock will start. The boss fights are really annoying. They just run at you and try to hound you to death. If you're a punch character, that'll help since you have the stamina, but it will take a long time before they go down. There is no health bar for the boss, and no convincing feedback that you're actually doing damage to them. It sucks. Each level is the same premise, more or less, but with increasing difficulty in the sense that the levels are more confusing to navigate, with more branching pathways, and enemies become more annoying. And you'll need to scour the levels almost entirely to find all the keys you need to advance anyway, so you'll need to memorize where you've been. Once you defeat those 4 stages in front of you, you'll get to go to Magneto stage. But there's a problem with that. The cartridge of the game says to press B and up together with start after you finish the 4 levels, but that's actually not true. You hold select B and up and press start. Why do you have to enter a code to reach the final level in a game you've already beaten everything else in anyway? I have no idea. There are not a lot of positives here. Like I said, it's ugly, it doesn't feel good to control, the characters are limited, there are no cool mutant powers to wield, and the X-Men die really easily, and there are no continues. Once all of your X-Men perish, it's game over, so you're guaranteed to lose one every level since the AI is useless. This forces you to choose your team wisely for each level and really requires you to practice them individually to get them all down for a flawless run at the whole thing. That's not so bad since you can pick any level off the bat, but you'll have to decide if this one is worth that amount of your time and effort. For me, it isn't. Okay, what's next? Maybe Wolverine on his own will be better. Well, kind of. In this one, Wolverine has been captured by familiar foes Magneto and Sabretooth, and has been stranded on a deserted island, but it appears not quite so deserted to me. It's a deadly place, filled with enemies, traps, and of course, Magneto and Sabretooth. Thankfully, this one is a platformer with a familiar recipe. Go from left to right, defeat bad guys, and find the exit. Your only attack is your fist, so you'll need to be right up on enemies to do damage, and that's the biggest bummer here really, you're going to take hits. The jumping and maneuvering isn't bad, and on some levels you can skip right through and avoid all run-ins with enemies if you want, although it sometimes does pay off to explore. There are some hidden doors scattered around with bonuses like extra lives and continues, and some sidekick characters bearing helpful gifts. The game is tough. You can lose all of your health if you end up in a bad spot with an enemy, so be careful. There is a gimmick on your side though. The more you kill, the more your berserker meter in the bottom grows, and if you're hit, that meter goes down. If you manage to get the berserker meter full, Wolverine goes into berserker mode and kicks butt. It's hard to get though, at least for me it was, as I had a hard time going long without taking a hit. Most of the time you're just punching with your bare stupid fist, but what about those adamantium claws? You have to press select for those, and they do twice the damage to the enemy, but your health goes down a little. I eventually stopped using them. Punching will do for most enemies, just be patient. As stated, you can find some sidekicks along the way to help you out. If you find Psylocke, you'll get the Havoc device, which allows you to call on Havoc, so you can switch to him while you regenerate health. The first 3 stages aren't so bad, but eventually you'll get to the water stage, and that's where the game decides to ratchet up the cheese. It's kinda crazy what all can hurt you here, in addition to having limited oxygen. At first, I was afraid of the giant turbines in the background. They're big and scary, and look like they could do some damage to an X-Men if he were to get, too close, so I hugged the edges. Big mistake. The little bitty turbines on the edges will mess you up, and some passages require precise swimming placement that makes the water level of Ninja Turtles look like a breeze. Don't get me started on the killer bubbles. How are those things even deadly? But that level is nothing compared to the fire level, where nowhere is safe. I ended up in the fire a lot here. Assume no platform is safe and continuously move. If not for these relentless spikes in difficulty, this game wouldn't be so bad. The final bout with Magneto isn't even that bad, and the final bout against Sabretooth requires you to just continuously punch him in the face and off a mountain. That's a cinch compared to getting your sideburns caught in one of these pesky turbines, or falling into magma constantly. It's not to say the game isn't beatable, certainly it is. It will require some practice, especially in the latter levels where knowing the route to the end will save you a number of certain deaths from trial and error, and finding the free game icons which grant you an extra continue will be money, as the game only starts you with a single continue. Between these two, Wolverine is easily the better option, but compared to the uncanny X-Men, gluing your eyelids together would be a better option. Really, both games are difficult in a not well made and aggravating sort of way. X-Men fans deserved better, and thankfully got a couple of better titles in the 90s. To name a few, there was one simply titled X-Men on the Genesis in 1993, a very difficult action platformer. X-Men Mutant Apocalypse came to the Super Nintendo in 94, was developed by Capcom, and is a decent time. Alright, well that does it for X-Men games on the NES. What's your X-Men superpower? And thanks for watching.